What if I told you that right now, somewhere in the world, there are passenger planes so rare that fewer examples exist than there are giant pandas in the wild? While airlines are ordering hundreds of new jets every year, these magnificent machines are down to their last handful, and when they're gone forever. After tracking down every active passenger aircraft on the planet, I discovered something incredible. At least 10 airliner types have fewer survivors than most endangered species, and you can still buy a ticket on them today. Starting at number 10, we have the Airbus A318, the baby bus that everyone forgot existed. Airbus only built 80 of these miniature widebodies, making it rarer than a Ferrari Enzo from day one. Today, just 6 are still carrying passengers, all wearing Air France colours and bouncing around Europe like they don't know they're supposed to be extinct. The A318 was supposed to be Airbus's answer to regional jets, except they forgot the regional jets are supposed to be cheap to operate. This thing has the same cockpit as its bigger brothers, meaning you need pilots trained on the full A320 family just to fly 100 people from Paris to Nice. It's like using a Formula 1 driver to deliver pizza. The maintenance costs are basically identical to an A319 that carries 40 more passengers, which is why airlines looked to the math and said thanks, but no thanks. Air France keeps them around because, well, they already own them and they're too stubborn to admit defeat. You can catch one of their short European hops, especially midweek when business travelers need to get from Paris to somewhere boring for a meeting. The cabin feels weirdly spacious because it has wide-body DNA and a tiny body, like a corgi that thinks it's a German shepherd. Book a Tuesday morning flight from Charles de Gaulle to Frankfurt and you might just snag one, although Air France swaps equipment more often than a teenager changes their mind about college majors. Moving to number 9, the Boeing 767-200 is hanging on by a thread with exactly 4 passenger frames still flying. Zimbabwe's national carrier has 2, though one spends more time parked than a mall security car. The other 2 belong to Omni Air International, flying American sports teams and cruise passengers who have no idea they're on an aviation unicorn. This was Boeing's first wide-body twin, launched when fuel was cheap and airlines thought bigger was always better. The 200 was the short one that nobody really wanted because if you're going wide-body, why not go all the way? It's like ordering a small popcorn at the movies. Technically possible, but missing the point. These 4 survivors exist because Zimbabwe can't afford anything newer, and Omni specializes in weird charter contracts where the client doesn't care what shows up as long as it has wings. The 767-200 drinks fuel like a college freshman at their first party, which is why everyone else retired theirs when oil prices went crazy. But in Zimbabwe, where the economy operates in its own special rules, keeping an old 767 flying somehow makes more sense than buying something more efficient. If you want to fly one, your best bet is stalking Omni Air's charter schedule or booking Harare to Johannesburg and praying for a substitution. Number 8 takes us to Canada's north, where the de Havilland Dash 7 proves that sometimes 4 engines are better than 2. Only 113 were ever built, and fewer than 20 survive in any kind of service. For passenger operations, you're looking at maybe 6 aircraft worldwide, with Air Tindi and Yellowknife operating half of them. The Dash 7 is what happens when engineers get drunk and decide to see how slowly they can make something fly. This thing lands on runways shorter than most people's driveways, which is perfect when your destination is a gravel strip next to a mine in the Arctic. It has 4 turboprops because apparently 2 weren't noisy enough, and the cabin vibrates at a frequency that makes your teeth feel weird for hours afterwards. Air Tindi uses them because nothing else can do what the Dash 7 does, carry actual passengers and cargo to places that shouldn't have airports. It's the aviation equivalent of a mountain goat. Ugly, but impossibly capable. They advertise it as a feature, not a bug, telling customers they're flying on one of the last 20 Dash 7s on Earth like it's some kind of privilege to have your fillings rattled loose. Book a flight to any Canadian mine site from Yellowknife and prepare for an experience that modern aviation regulations would never allow if this thing wasn't grandfathered in. At number 7, we find the Boeing 737-200, the original baby Boeing that refuses to die. About 1,100 were built, making them as common as pigeons in the 1970s. Today, 9 airlines still fly them in passenger service, mostly in places where runway quality is more suggestion than requirement. The 737-200 is what your grandfather thinks all airplanes still look like: cigar-shaped fuselage engines that look like hairdryers, and a cockpit with more dials than a Swiss watch factory. No computers, no fly-by-wire, just cables and pulleys like God and Boeing intended. In northern Canada, companies like Air Inuit and Nolinor bolt gravel kits on the bottom, basically armor plating to protect against rocks that would turn a modern 737 into Swiss cheese. Venezuela keeps a few flying because their economy is so isolated that a 50-year-old Boeing is easier to maintain than buying anything built in this century. They've gotten so good at keeping these things alive that their mechanics could probably build one from memory. The engines are older than most of the pilots flying them, burning fuel at a rate that would make Greta Thunberg personally come after you. But when you need to land on a runway that's more suggestion than cement, in weather that would ground everything else, the 737-200 just shrugs and asks what time you want to leave. Number 6 is the Ilyushin IL-96, Russia's attempt at building a jumbo jet that ended up being more like a medium jet with ego issues. Only 33 were built, and Cubana keeps 1 to 3 flying depending on how many are broken that week. The IL-96 has 4 engines because Russians don't trust twins for ocean crossing, which is ironic since the engines are the least reliable part. It's a wide body that carries about as many passengers as a narrow body, with fuel consumption that would make an oligarch wince. Cubana uses them for long-haul flights when they work, which is about as often as a broken clock is right. This plane exists in that weird space where it's too Russian for Western airlines but too modern for nostalgic aviation nerds. It has glass cockpits and modern avionics wrapped around systems designed when the Soviet Union was still a thing. Flying on one is like using a smartphone that runs on coal. Cubana keeps them because they literally can't buy anything else thanks to sanctions, and Russia keeps giving them parts because they need at least one foreign airline to pretend their aviation industry still matters. Landing at number 5, the Airbus A310 is down to fewer than 10 passenger frames, almost all flying in Iran where sanctions have created a parallel aviation universe. Out of 255 built, these last survivors are kept alive by mechanics who've learned to manufacture parts that Airbus stopped making when flip phones were cool. The A310 was Airbus's first attempt at a smaller wide-body, back when they thought airlines wanted variety instead of commonality. It's like the middle child of aviation, not as famous as the A300 that came before it or the A330 that replaced it. Iran Air and Iran Air Tour fly them on international routes, including Tehran to Paris, which must be awkward given that the French companies can't legally sell them parts. These planes are flying because Iran has turned aircraft maintenance into an art form. They reverse engineer components, machine parts from raw metal, and somehow keep 40-year-old planes meeting international safety standards. It's like keeping a classic car running, except the classic car weighs 300,000 pounds and flies at 500 miles per hour. The cabins still have ashtrays from when smoking was allowed, and the galleys were designed for meals that airlines actually served instead of selling you a sad sandwich for $15. Number 4 brings us to the mighty Airbus A300-600, the plane that proved Europeans could build a wide body. Out of 561 A300s built in total, exactly 7 passenger versions of the 600 series are still carrying paying passengers, all of them in Iran. This was the plane that started Airbus's entire empire, the first twin-engine wide-body that made Boeing executives lose sleep. Now it's down to 7 frames that Iran keeps flying through pure determination and engineering creativity that would make MacGyver jealous. Iran Air uses them on domestic routes where demand is high and options are limited, packed with passengers who have no idea they're flying on one of the last of its kind. The A300-600 is bulletproof in airplane terms, overbuilt like a German sedan from the 1980s. But even bulletproof things need parts, and when Airbus stopped supporting passenger versions years ago, Iran had to get creative. They've developed their own metallurgy techniques, their own quality control processes, and probably their own prayers to keep these things airborne. Every landing could be the last one, not because they're dangerous, but because finding a replacement for some hydraulic valve means scouring the planet for another A300 to cannibalize. Coming in at number 3, the Shorts 360 is still flying passengers in exactly 2 places on Earth. Out of 165 built, 1 flies in Israel during tourist and military charters, and another bounces around the Bahamas with Pineapple Air, a name that tells you everything about their approach to aviation. The Shorts 360 looks like someone forgot to tell the designers that planes are supposed to be aerodynamic. It's essentially a flying box with wings, nicknamed the Shed because that's literally what it looks like. Unpressurized, ungainly, and unbelievably slow, it survives because it can operate from runways other planes wouldn't even taxi on. Pineapple Air uses theirs to connect Bahamian islands that are too small for anything bigger and too far for boats. The cabin is like flying in a 1970s van, complete with windows you can actually see out of and engines so loud that the safety briefing includes hand signals. In Israel, Ayit Aviation uses their specialized flights where looking weird is apparently an advantage. These planes exist in a gap where economics and geography meet desperation, serving routes that make no sense on paper but keep communities connected. Number 2 is the Ilyushin IL-62, the Soviets' answer to the Boeing 707 if the answer was wrong. About 290 were built, and Air Koryo in North Korea keeps a couple technically airworthy, though they mostly fly government missions and the occasional tourist charter for people who think regular air travel isn't adventurous enough. The IL-62 has 4 engines mounted on the tail like a Soviet mullet. Business in the front, party in the back. It was designed when the Cold War was hot and efficiency was a Western concept. The fuel burn is so bad that even countries with subsidized jet fuel think twice about flying it. The cockpit needs a flight engineer because there are too many switches for 2 people to manage, like flying a power plant with wings. Air Koryo keeps them because they're basically cut off from buying anything built after the Berlin Wall fell. When they do fly passengers, it's usually domestic routes where international safety standards are more like suggestions. The cabin still has original Soviet-era fixtures, ashtrays in the armrests, and that special smell of aviation history mixed with desperation. These planes are one mechanical issue away from becoming monuments, which honestly might be a more dignified end than limping along as the aviation equivalent of a zombie. Finally, at number 1, the absolute rarest passenger plane you can still fly on is the Ilyushin IL-18, with exactly 1 example in passenger service on the entire planet. Air Koryo's P835 registration is it, the last of hundreds built, still occasionally carrying tourists and locals around North Korea like it's 1957. The IL-18 first flew when Eisenhower was president and has 4 turboprop engines that sound like the world's angriest bees. This isn't just old, it's ancient in aviation terms, designed in an era when slide rules were high-tech and computers were the size of buildings. The fact that it still flies passengers in 2025 is like finding out someone's using a horse and buggy for Uber. The plane still exists because North Korea exists in its own reality where normal rules don't apply. They keep flying it with parts they probably make in the same factories they claim to produce smartphones. When it does fly passenger services, usually domestic sightseeing routes, it's literally offering a journey back in time. The cabin hasn't been updated since Kennedy was president. The engines burn fuel like it's free, which in North Korea it might be. And the whole experience is like aviation archaeology with a boarding pass. These 10 aircraft represent the absolute edge of commercial aviation. Planes so rare that seeing one is like spotting a unicorn, if unicorns were made of aluminum and burned jet fuel. They survive in the margins where politics, geography, and economics create weird pockets where normal rules don't apply. When they're gone, and they will be soon, we lose not just machines, but connections to aviation history that shaped how the world works today.